Yeah.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this after my roll call, please.
Mr. Storm?
Here.
Dr. Krebs?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mrs. Marks?
Here.
Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Here. All right, that moves us to the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
Yeah, Roger. We've got a closed session item on here tonight that I think should be an open session. And how do I do that? What should I do? I think it's regarding the BA office at the high school.
Well, we are not at liberty to disclose what is to be discussed in closed session. If there's something that at some point you want to add to the agenda specifically unrelated to what may or may not be in a closed session, then, but they shouldn't be tied to one another.
Okay. So then I'd like to add to the agenda for future is a discussion about the BA office. So it's an open session tonight. I think that people need to know what's going on from that stuff that we're going to talk about in the closed session necessarily, not attorney stuff or any of that
But
kind of
I
stuff.
guess for future, I mean, just for my own edification, you
Yes.
say for future action, what is there something specific? that-
Well, I'd like the office moved out of the high school. So I don't want to put it on for action tonight because I don't think that would be fair. But if you put it on for future, we can have discussion, talk about it, and then we'll talk about the other things that can't be talked about at the board table that would be potentially the attorney type stuff. But I think it should be discussed. It shouldn't be hidden.
Okay, so you are making a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
And then put
Is
the,
there a second?
Well, hold on. He not finished the motion.
so it'd be just,
Amend the agenda.
yeah, to amend the agenda would be to discuss the union office at Brighton High School
For future action.
in future, right?
So is there a second?
Sure.
So we have a motion to amend by Mr. Connolly, second by Mr. Trombley. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the, excuse me, the motion to amend signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Was that,
It's 3-4.
you were,
I'm in support of
you were an
that.
A?
Yes.
Okay. I guess
You
I
said
still.
nay? Did you say nay?
Did you say?
I am in support of
Can
the
I,
motion.
can I ask
Yep.
for a roll call vote on that? Let's do a roll call.
Fine, roll call vote, Ms. Ackerman?
Mr. Storm?
In favor of the motion.
Dr. Krebs? Ms. Reed?
Nay.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
No. So that passes 4-3, so that will be added as item C to the, for future action portion of the agenda. All right, that moves us to the superintendent report. Dr. Ella.
Yeah, so I'm just going to be very quick on it. This next week, our high school students are going to be taking part in exams. So I want to wish all of our students luck as they study and prepare for their exams on Thursday and Friday. This next week, that'll be the conclusion of the first semester. Monday, the 30th will be a records day for our secondary schools, and it will be a professional development day for our elementary schools. And then we will start the second semester on Tuesday of next week. So the year's flying along, and I just want to say great job to all of our students and staff and everybody who's been working so hard this year. Just two other things really quickly. One is we're going to have, I believe, a quartet from the orchestra that is going to be here at our next meeting on February 13th to play for the school board. You approved a new class as the This is our junior class is the first class that started with the orchestra program in 5th grade many years ago. And they're going to come here and play a number for you just so that you can kind of see the progress that they've made throughout the year. So we're going to do that. And then we're also going to have a visit from some folks from our drama program. That'll either be next month or the month after that, connected to the Guys and Dolls presentation, our performance that's going to be coming up in March. And those are fantastic performances, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that those will be coming to the board soon. So thank you so much.
Can I ask a quick question? Regarding the performance from the quartet for the board, does the quartet or do members of that group ever perform at any of the senior living facilities in town?
I don't know.
Mr.
Probably,
Hammerhead.
probably, but that's a great question to ask them when they get here.
Super.
So it's a great idea, though.
From a process standpoint within the district, seeking out avenues, ways that we can engage with senior members of our community, I think is, especially with music, is wonderful.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Dr. Allah. All right, that moves us to the call to the public portion of our agenda. If there's anyone that would like to address the board, this is your opportunity to do so. There are cards at the rear of the room. We ask that you fill them out, place them in the box. You will have 3 minutes to address the board, and I need to solicit an assistant to handle the,
What are we doing? Am I doing it? You want to do it?
not me.
Go.
There.
I believe it was the secretary in the past.
So you've just been recruited.
There you go.
So when your 30 seconds is left in your allotted 3 minutes, Ms. Marks will hold up the yellow card indicating that you have 30 seconds left. When your time is up, she will indicate so by the raising the red card. So the first one I will call to the podium is Eva Helmanen.
Eva Helmanen, 630 Brighton Lake Road. I'm back. Last meeting, I mentioned about the Brighton High School locker room and the JV locker room. And in the last couple of weeks, I've done a little bit of research. First off, I heard that this was being addressed a few years back, but the ball kind of got dropped, and I don't think it was intentional, but when I met with all the coaches, I have not met with the rink manager yet. We have a meeting scheduled. He was out of town. I toured the locker rooms with them. I toured the South Lyon locker room, which has been done. And I just want to report back to you, and I'm hoping to be able to meet with some of the board members to make a presentation along with the people that I feel are important that have the input as far as the coaches from the teams. First of all, I don't know if you're all aware of it, but the Brighton varsity hockey team has more state championships than any other team at Brighton High School. They're also, the organized varsity team has been in existence the least amount of time. Coach Muggeth did an amazing job bringing this program forward. I believe that it should be on display, not only benefiting the kids that are coming in, but to show everybody how proud we are of the Brighton High School hockey team. The locker rooms, I took pictures. They are at best despicable. And it's not because they're not trying to keep them clean. They're just dated. They're 20 years old. There's only 3 shower heads working. There's all kinds of things, which I can get into later. But following up with our tour of the South Lyon locker room, I spoke with the coach there. We got a bunch of builders. We got a bunch of names. We are working in the process of getting quotes so we can get a general idea. After meeting with Coach Muggeth and Coach Kivisto, we would like to ask Brighton area schools if they could somehow work with us, because we feel it would be about $200,000 to bring these locker rooms up to snuff. The lighting, the showers, the everything about them really is on the downslide. I also had the team over for dinner one night, and I had them fill out 3x5 cards on what is most important to them as Brighton High School and JV hockey players. And every single one of them said the shower stalls and then their stalls for their equipment. And I would say that's an A. They did also request a sauna, but I said that was over the top. Let's see, what else was I going to say?
It's up 3 minutes. Please wrap up.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, but I wanted to speak again because I want you to know how important this is to us. And I'm hoping to get a few board members together to make a presentation and then follow through with the full board. Thank you so much for your time.
Before you return to your seat, I have a question for you, Mrs. Hillman. I ran for school board myself to engage with parents in the community and give parents like you an opportunity to engage with our board. I have children who participate in athletics in Brighton, and I have in other environments as well myself. When I grew up, I was actively involved in our school athletic program. And one of the just ideas I wanted to present to you to just see if you would be in support of something like this, perhaps we could, and I'll talk to colleagues of mine on this board, create a committee that's made up of members of the school
Exactly.
board and members of the community, parents perhaps that are involved in the hockey program. And together we could look at proposals that could ultimately be brought back with parent support to the school board.
That's
Would you
exactly
be in-
what
would
I've
you be in
done.
support of
I've
something like
talked with
that?
parents that are willing to do this, so.
Okay.
I just only had a couple weeks, so that is in the works, and I think that's exactly what we need is the mixture of the whole community. I don't want to do this myself anyway, but since I brought it up, I'm going to help spearhead the.
I definitely can't promise we'll renovate the locker room, but I can commit to supporting your effort. And clearly it's something that means a lot to you because you've been back twice to engage with the board.
Yeah, when something's important to me, I'll keep on it, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
One comment on that, just as a quick follow-up. When that conversation begins, Mr. Engleter has some real information about public dollars going to a private facility and some of the legalities of that. And I think that would be an important part of that conversation. Doesn't mean, I just want you to know, I think you should hear some of those feedback before you get too far down the road. So.
Can I say one thing, or is my time way up?
Sure.
As after speaking with the rink manager, they talked about potentially financially backing it and charging the publics, charging us a fee for an upgraded fee for use of the space.
Not saying that it's a no, I'm just saying that there are steps that
Right,
we have to
right.
take on our side to be, stay within the law. So thank you. I just wanted to throw
Perfect.
that out there before you get too far
Perfect.
down the
Thank
road.
you.
Thank you.
Nicole Colors.
Good evening. Just to go with what Mrs. Helmanen said, I see the younger hockey players and they are absolutely in love with the hockey program. So when they grow up, they'll also use these facilities. I did want to bring up a few items for school of choice. I don't know how to propose this, but if there's any way you could postpone your vote and talk to the teachers, see what they think is going on in the classroom and see school of choice, how it affects their kids, how it affects our kids. Because, and I know the union negotiates the class size, but there comes a point where jam-packing every class becomes detrimental to the students. At the younger grades, teachers are handling emotional needs every moment of the day. There are classrooms that have emotional needs back to back to back to back. I believe that a smaller class size may help this, and I know money is a factor, but meeting the needs of the kids is a very important part of the classroom. So I ask that you talk to teachers around the district, see what they think. Ideally, a parapro for every classroom would be amazing, but we can't even staff the special ed. So just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to address the board at the call of the public? No? Okay, that closes the call to the public and moves us into the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, the regular meeting minutes of January 9, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley,
Support.
supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item B, the school of choice for 2023. Dr. Outlaw, you want to handle that one? Sure.
Yep. So in front of you, you have a resolution. We talked about this at the last meeting. To Mrs. Culler's point, last year we are doing limited choice at the elementary level. And this proposal continues down that pathway because we are getting close to our capacity in some of our schools. So it gives us a little bit more control over things like class sizes. So we're asking for you to offer limited choice in grades junior kindergarten, 1st through 4th grade, and then we remain unlimited in kindergarten. And then in 5th through 11th grade, 12th grade is also limited. And then the bridge, 9th through 12th grade would be unlimited as well. So that's what we're proposing. It's the same as last year. The only tweak is that we're doing limited for junior kindergarten. We're asking for that as well.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to move, yeah, school of choice.
Motion by Mr. Conley. Support by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Please. Someone over there have a question?
I'm good. Yes, thank you.
Whoever wants to go first.
That's right. Thank you. It was decided, I think, when contracts were negotiated to keep the classes at a size, and it was, I'm sure amongst the employees in the labor group, they could have had more teachers and took a little less pay. And it wasn't decided to do that. It was decided to keep the same number of teachers and get maximum pay for the same number of teachers, which then pushed the classes to an extreme number in some cases, which is what the overloads are from. And that was a by choice situation. We spent virtually all the money, this $6 million, on the existing teachers and not hiring new staff to lower the class sizes. So those were decisions that were made, Mrs. Cullors.
So as everyone, I think, on the board and those in the audience know, I'm new to this board, and this is my second meeting, so I don't say this from a position of knowing or understanding, the ins and outs and details associated with school of choice. But, I personally moved with my family into Brighton because of the school system and the great school system that we have here. And as a member of this board, as we go forward, my hope is, and I've shared this with many members of the board, to be part of creating a differentiated learning experience here in Brighton where we attract people to this district and have problems like too many people wanting to come to this school because of the education we provide to the community. With that being said, it would be helpful to understand, Dr. Outlaw, what guidance we use as a district to the comment that was made earlier during the call to the public. What is the guideline as it relates to class size and optimal class size from a teacher's perspective? What is an optimal class size, and how, data, how does the current class size that we have in the different grade levels that were referenced compare to that standard?
Sure. So philosophically, and this is the same in every district, the younger the students, the lower the class size. To give you an example, in kindergarten class, a teacher has to deal with putting on snow pants and hats, and there's so many things that you have to do with younger students. They need so much more assistance. So class sizes are lower at the younger ages, and then the older you get, the the larger the class sizes. You get into your 30s when you're dealing with an advanced placement class at the high school, for example, where it's a very different model and students are so self-sufficient. Here in Brighton, we've actually, it's one of the investments that we've made with our additional revenue is to lower class sizes. It's not everywhere, it's not perfect, but we have tried to not pack every single classroom full of students. We've tried to have an optimal class size. From a teacher perspective, the less students, the better it is, the more individualized attention you can give. But you have to find a balance between that desire and also being able to sustain your school district. So where are we at? We're in really good shape. The spot, I think, 3 years ago where I think we were high was at Malpe. Our Malpe class sizes for that age group, we were high. We were in the 30s. And we have added sections at Malpe in 5th and 6th grade to lower them back into more ideal class sizes, being in that 25 to 30 range. So where are we in comparison with other districts? We're very comparable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question in there, Edgar. So let's look at the numbers like Andy said. So a kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what would be the typical enrollment in those classrooms right now? Like a kindergarten, 1, 2?
Sure. So junior kindergarten, I believe that the class size is capped at 20. And then it goes to, I believe, 24. Mr. Scaling's got it right in front of him. I think it's 28. When you get above that, there are the maximums.
Okay. So is that
But
first
around 25, I think, is probably your average class size in your 1st through 4th grade.
Okay.
And then when you get to intermediate school, your average class size is going to be 25 to 28, probably closer to the 28. When you get into middle school, you're probably 28. You have some classes getting into the 30s. And at the high school, you're going to have a lot of classes that are in your 28 to 34 range. Obviously, it depends. If you have a class that's a special education class with co-teachers, the class sizes are smaller. Again, an AP class where you have a lot of self-sufficient students, the class size might be up to 34. So it just depends. And then obviously you have things like physical education and band that are much larger.
So in this, we'll call it a little bit of a Band-Aid. It sounds like we affected how many sections? You said a couple sections that we tried at Spencer?
At Malpe.
Or Malpe.
At
Okay.
Malpe, we added additional sections at both 5th grade and 6th grade to lower the class sizes down from being in the 30s down into the upper 20s.
And that was this year.
That was actually not this year. We're doing it again this year, but we did it last year.
And what were the results of the test on that when you look at what you did in the prior year? How did it work out for the students?
The test scores?
Yeah.
I'd have to get you the
test. How's the health and wellness and then tests?
Yeah. So our comparisons, what we did is we did pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, just because the tests were a little odd in that 1 year. And, as we've talked about, we're one of the only school districts in the entire state that moved forward during the pandemic, educationally and on test scores. So we did move forward.
So it would support lower class sizes were increased, made it better for the students.
You know what, as a researcher, you can't really draw like a link in that way. You can't say, yes, because of this. It would take a little bit more research, and there's a lot more variables that are in play than just class size. But there is some research that lower class sizes can be beneficial. There's a famous study from Tennessee that was done, I think it was maybe in the late 80s or 90s, that, that was, talked about class size. But at the end of the day, as a teacher, the more individualized attention you can give to students, the better from the teacher perspective.
Thank you.
Dr. Outlaw, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head or if we need to do some research on it, but I mean, one of the discussions we had as we were planning for the most recent bond was whether we had opportunities to add classrooms to further lower class sizes. And at the time, we found that we didn't have a whole lot of empty classrooms, so we couldn't hire a whole lot of additional teachers without building. But at the same time, based on the number of students we had and the expected population growth for our district, we would not legally be able to add to our buildings using bond dollars. We would have to use general fund dollars if we attempted to do that, and that would further constrain our ability to get approved for bonds in the future. I would be curious if that's still true. Are we still, we don't have a whole lot of empty classrooms we could put teachers in, and not able to really add on to the size of our buildings for classroom space?
So I can answer part of it, and I'd have to turn it back over to somebody else on what that restriction might be. But as far as our buildings, Horning and Spencer are small, and we're using every single classroom in those buildings. Hilton and Hawkins have a little bit more space, but they're running at full capacity as well. Hawkins has some of our self-contained programs, and so we're very full. That's why we're doing limited only at the elementary level.
So even if we wanted to, we couldn't add 10 more teachers to each building because we don't have classrooms.
We do not have classrooms to do that at the elementary level.
Well, and if I may kind of follow up on that, and just kind of take a step back and look at the broader picture. So certainly the folks that have been in this community, that are on this board or as residents of the community can recall, we were in a very dark space, John, 10, 12 years ago, on the brink of an emergency manager. And as part of the overall restructuring that took place at that time was the closing of Lindbaum and the closing of Miller, and the restructuring of the entire, operations of the school district to essentially comprise the buildings that we have now, and that's still the case. And that restructuring, which of course was at the time Dr. Gray was the superintendent, there were obviously other things that happened at that time that helped pull the district out of the abyss that it found itself in financially at that time. And as the district continued to grow in the right direction from a financial health standpoint, was about the time that then I came on the board. And and one of the things, of course, during the initial onboarding for me as a new board member at that time, in working with Dr. Gray and his cabinet at the time, was the realization of where the district had come from to where it was at that point. And one of the really the truisms that it was instilled in me as the new board member was, given our facilities, the number of classrooms, the buildings we have, 6,000 students is really our sweet spot. That's really the approximate number of students in our district that we can properly staff from a student to teacher ratio, that we can properly finance and still provide obviously the state-of-the-art facilities, as much advanced instruction as we can, and continue to build our fund equity. And that was, and every year we'd have that conversation, and 6,000 students is still our sweet spot. At that point in time, we didn't have 6,000 students in our district. And so when I began on the board, we did school of choice every year, and they were all unlimited. We had zero limited school of choice for any grade, because of the fact that we needed, frankly, the school of choice students in order to get us into that sweet spot where we could maximize our financial growth as a district, but not overload our staff, and obviously not put us in a situation where we have to start building buildings. If we as a board, decide we want to build buildings and new classrooms and add more teachers so that we can reduce the ratio, but we can do that, then that's certainly something that we would have to have obviously a much more robust discussion about. But in the meantime, fortunately, what we've seen is that since I got on the board 7 years ago, we've consistently converted a grade by grade from unlimited to limited, and frankly, I think that's a good thing, because the upshot of that is that more of the students are in-district students. We don't need to accept as many out of district students in order to find that sweet spot from an enrollment standpoint. And so from my perspective, I think this is just a continuation of the good planning that we've had in place now for 7 years to continue to kind of keep us in that range And when I'm talking about enrollment, I'm talking about the bricks and mortar students. I'm not talking about shared services. Obviously, we can continue to grow our enrollment in shared services, which obviously directly impacts our bottom line, but doesn't impact, our existing brick and mortar students within our district. So bottom line for me is, to me, that this is, I think, a continuation of the movement in the right direction. And hopefully someday, there's obviously a lot of demographic factors and population growth factors that will dictate whether there will come a point in time where either within our existing facilities, we have no school of choice because we have enough of our own students to fill out where we are as a district, or alternatively, if whoever the board is at that time decides you want to build a new building and expand the number of students and add teachers, and it's financially, sound planning, then that's certainly something that I think, could be entertained at that point. But in the interim, I just wanted to provide some additional historical perspective because this has been a long, it's been a long program. It's been very successful. And I know that to address Ms. Culler's comments and others of not overloading our buildings, we're still taking the right step in the right direction by increasing the number of limited school of choice grades that we're entertaining. So for all those reasons, I'm going to support the program. Mr. Town?
Well, I just think that the whole idea of the school of choice is wonderful because it's added and continue to add opportunities for more and more students. But, and it's been brought up here on different occasions by board members, and they're not wrong. It's like, where do we have the line and where's the cut? And that is to be looked at for our community, so the community is well served. But it has been a balancing act, and I think we've all kind of come to the middle of the road on that all the time as far as, well, we agree. So I would continue and support the school of choice until, again, it's administrators and the teachers have to decide what's allowed and what wouldn't be my expertise and what they can teach or not teach. But the point is, we sure have continued to grow opportunities from where we all started to where we're at today. It's just not any comparison, and I couldn't be happier to say that the kids are getting better opportunities. So we just stay on that same page, and there could be adjustments to it, obviously, but it's working.
So just one quick comment. I know we have a working session coming up in the future, but one thing that I am in favor of, and it has benefited my own daughter, Julia, who's a student in Brighton schools, is the ability for students to actually go out into the community and work, engage with different organizations, healthcare organizations, different types of technical roles, performing arts. And so as we start to think as a board and engage parents from the community to look at our curriculum and look at avenues, individualized career pathways for students to, as my daughter is going to be going her senior year next year to LCC to study nursing, what an absolutely incredible opportunity for young people to get a head start in life and also not incur a ton of debt, and also free up seats in the school for other students to ultimately be able to take classes in Brighton while they're out in the field engaged with organizations in our community. So I look forward to that conversation as we start to examine curriculum and career pathways.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion for the approval of the school of choice for 2023 as presented signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item C, additional fees, construction management. Mr. Ingleter?
We covered this at the last meeting. I think it was fairly straightforward. Basically, the construction program is going to carry on through this year, and we need supervision to do so. So again, the recommendation is to approve the request by Clark for additional fees to cover that time period.
All right, do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Trombley,
Support.
supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
If there is any discussion, Gary Steller from Clark Construction is here that can address.
So I asked this at the last board meeting, and I'll just ask again, from a process standpoint, as it relates to the district going forward, what is the mechanism that we have to ensure when we enter into contracts for improvements in the district, we're not exposed to additional fees and additional expenses as it relates to quoted work? And I understand from the last board meeting, there's good reason why things have changed. But I also know, and anyone that works in a project-based construction field, it's not a secret in any industry that change orders and managing change of scope, fees on the back end of project are very, very lucrative for the parties involved. And it's my obligation to taxpayers to make sure that we're sensitive to that as a district. And I'm just wondering, how do we guard against scope creep and additional fees that are outside of the original scope of work going forward?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I guess it's germane to the conversation, but it's one of the more challenging aspects to running a bond construction program. Obviously, you could talk to Bill about it. Change management is probably one of the more irritating or difficult things to deal with because you're always going to encounter something, so there are conditions that come up that you can't plan for. So you just need to make sure you have someone like Clark, when they're doing their job, they're analyzing all that on our behalf. They're supposed to be watching out for the district. That's the job of the construction manager. But we have a process to review those things as we do, make sure that they're reasonable and necessary, and then they're approved and move forward.
Andy, per our contracts with the subcontractors, there's set amounts that they're allowed for a markup, which allows them to use that markup and that only markup. And typically Clark will go back and verify the numbers per the quantities and the labor rates.
Quantities or time and material or whatever that goes into that change fee is analyzed. And, the architect also takes a look at that. So there's multiple eyes on it to make sure that it's at least in line with, industry standards and what seems reasonable, that we're not getting ripped off.
So was there mention that someone from Clark is at the meeting tonight?
Yeah, Gary is actually here.
Would you like to address, you might be able to answer these questions. Go ahead, go to the podium.
Could you go to the podium so that people watching on the live stream can see you?
So what I've found I've been doing schools for 32 years, and what I've found is people new to the process and things don't quite understand the construction management role. So construction management is vastly different from general contractor. So the questions you asked kind of revolve around a general contractor. So had we been a general contractor, we would have bid on the project and we would have committed to doing it in a certain amount of time. That's not what construction management is. Construction management, you bring us on to work as your construction department to manage things overall. And then we put out to bid each individual trade contract. And so we hold them responsible to do that work within that time. And that has happened right along. There's been no extensions, nothing like that. What this is it's a change in the when some of the work is taking place and some additional work that's added to the project.
Isn't that a change?
Yeah, but it's chosen by the district. It has nothing to do with us. We didn't add things.
So my questions weren't directed at Clark in particular. It's the process.
No. So it's not unusual in K-12 for there to be another look at the plan that was put forth in the bond, because year after year, situations, school districts change and they reevaluate what they're going to do or the pace they're going to do it or the order that they're going to do it. So we work as a group as best we can to keep those things within the time frame.
So you mentioned you've been doing this for 34 years.
32.
32.
Yeah.
You know a lot of the incumbents in the industry, yes?
Oh, yeah.
You think any of those incumbents are not familiar with the process you just outlined as far as expected changes and how things change throughout the course of the work being performed?
Do I think that?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Do you?
I think they're very aware
Okay.
and they all understand how the game is played. And
Who are they?
the general contractors that you're ultimately sourcing work to who
No,
bid
we
on
don't
projects.
source work to general contractors.
The general contractors that.
We don't source work to general contractors. Again, I'll say it. We are the construction manager and we bid to each individual trade contractor. There are no general contractors involved.
Contractors who are performing the work, what do you refer to them as?
They are trade contractors. A general contractor is a totally different situation where, and I explained it, where they do have an overall contract. And yes, they do come back for those kind of changes and things. Each individual train contractor does tend to do that as well, but we're your cop for that.
So you're the cop for that. So how do you then protect the district?
We review, like they said over there, we review each and every change. See, our fees are very low, about 2% or less maybe on this one. So there's nothing in it in K-12 for a construction manager, us in particular, to allow any additional changes. Again, we work as your construction department. We think of ourselves as any one of your departments. So we are working for you. There's such a small percentage in it for us if there's changes. In fact, that would get eaten up in our administrative time. So we want changes no more than you do.
But I thought we're paying for the administrative time. So you're not eating any administrative time. I was at last meeting, I thought we
Because it would
voted.
take more of our time. We would have people working more hours and our hours are capped. So I understand
But
this process.
we're paying, the district is paying for you to invest in more estimating time to process the changes that we as a district ultimately
No,
are
you don't
initiating?
pay, no, there's a cap on
No,
that.
I thought we voted on that in the last
No,
meeting.
that's to do additional work that's coming up for this next
Doing
summer.
the estimating for the additional work?
Our group is, and
You are.
that's included
Correct.
in that
But that's
proposal.
beyond what was initially committed to. It's something that we as a school board voted on in the last meeting to pay for with district funds. Correct?
We didn't vote. No, that's.
About it and agreed that it
Yeah,
was
that's
something.
entirely up to you.
I asked the question about estimating, is an estimating part of overhead? That's in it. And it was
These are
communicated
additional scope items that were
Correct.
over and above the original. amount.
from the district. We initially, it was clarified in the last meeting, the district requested the changes, but we have to pay for the estimating resources that are going to be committed from you.
You don't have to, it's up to you.
Well, I understand that, but in order for the district to be able to proceed with the changes, it was communicated in the last meeting, we'd have to pay you to fund the estimating resources required to facilitate the work.
Only if you'd like us to do that.
Correct.
But you don't have a staff to do it, so we become your staff.
I'll spare everyone the time. You'd stated that there's no additional expense for the changes. My point is, as a taxpayer in the district, we are paying, the district is paying for you to facilitate the changes that we as a district are requesting that are different than the original scope of work.
This is added scope.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, and so it's not a change and you're not paying additional, you're paying what you would pay for our services for any scope. It's not, it's,
We bought an additional year's worth of their services.
Correct.
Because the bond didn't finish on time. So we have to extend it another year, and we purchased a year longer worth of their services, which was the same fee as what we paid for
I don't disagree,
3 years.
but it's beyond what was initially purchased, is my point.
Yes, because the bond was supposed to end in 3 years, and it didn't, so it got additional. We didn't pay an additional markup, we paid the same as what we
I
paid.
don't disagree with that. Agreed.
Yeah.
But it's additional monies coming out of the district coffers.
Yes,
that-
it's
Correct.
additional year of services,
Correct.
yes.
That's all I was trying to make. Only point I was trying to make.
Any further questions or comments, discussion?
I know I don't want to run it, so I'm going to vote for it. Glad we got enough projects, so I'm good. So he's off the hook with me.
Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item D, the setting of the dates for the second board meeting of the month. Dr. Outlaw?
Yeah, the board voted on it conceptually. This is just putting the dates in front of you. In some of the conversations, we adjusted it slightly. There's a couple of the months where it overlapped with some vacations and things like that. So the dates that are in front of you are, we have 2 meetings a month, other than in your summer months and around a couple of your holidays. So are there any questions?
We have a motion to approve the specified dates in what's placed in the packet. So moved by Dr. Krebs,
Support.
support by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
So I have just a question. So in February, we just have 1 month because we have the work session.
Correct.
The idea is that we have the work session on February 7th.
Correct.
Are we thinking that we will have additional work sessions? Because I think when we used this model in the past, the 2 meetings a month, we had work sessions quarterly, correct?
We did, yeah.
Is that something that we're continuing to consider or? is that-
Well, last year we did 2 meetings a month last year. The second meeting was always a workshop. The first one was a little bit more formal structured. So it will depend, I think on the 7th, the board is going to talk about how you want to, if you wanted to be a committee of the whole, doing committees. I think that's what you were going to talk about on the 7th.
Yeah,
So-
and I think however we land with respect to the committees on the 7th, as a board, I mean, there's going to inevitably be instances where we may need to just schedule, like, for example, last year when we voted to transition from Neola to Troon, we ended up having, I don't know, what, 5 meetings between whatever the dates were, August and October, to review all of those policies. So, I mean, things will come up where we may, I mean, this is really just setting in place the business meetings that we will need to have. And, obviously, we already have the 7th set for the workshop that's not on here. And, as committee meetings get scheduled, those will, we'll deal with those on an as-needed basis, basically. That's the way I look at it. So,
Thank you.
okay. All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That concludes our for action portion of the agenda and moves us to the for future action, item A, for discussion, the final phase of the bond. Dr. Alwal.
Yep. So I have 2 questions. These are for the board. The first one I think is easier. The second one, we're really looking for a discussion on this. We are coming closer to the end of the bond. The only project that remains that has not been designed is what it's called in the bond application is CTE Wing, which is in this building, on the east side of this building. So I guess my first question is, do you wish to proceed with this? And if yes, we need to start that design process. Do we want to wait until after February 7th? Or do we want to get a group together to start that process sooner than that? So CTE Wing is question number 1.
Back in 2017 and 18, we talked about this and put that on to build. And it was a discussion where we would offer, we'll call it opportunities that don't exist currently for our bridge schools. You all right with that? We would offer opportunities for our bridge students that they don't currently have, because it wasn't easy to get them back to the high school for classes that were running, or they just didn't want to go to the high school. So I felt when I brought it to everybody that it was a great idea to do it. Obviously, a lot of things have happened since then. We ran into COVID. We ran into shrinking enrollment at our alternative school as well, at the bridge. And there's reasons to do some things and others. But I would still recommend, or hope everybody considers, that we should put together a small committee to review the original vision of that and the dream sheet for what we can do for our students. And I would lean on the idea that our students that may need some assistance in certain areas, that this could be very advantageous to them. Now, if we can't do it with this method and do it within the bridge, but have the resources available, whether it's a shuttle that takes them for a 1-hour class at the other school or 2 hours, and have that continually moving so that those opportunities exist for students. I'm absolutely sure, as we had the original vision when I brought it to you guys and talked to Dr. Suri and Bill, and we all kind of just said, geez, this is the nucleus, it looks like it would work, is that the students we could aid in the percentage of success for those students at a significant amount by having these opportunities for them. So that's what I would just tell you before, if we say, no, we're just not going to do it at all. I would just like to seriously look at it. We all thought it was a good idea then. I still think it's a good idea in a fashion, and I don't know what that fashion is. And again, as we talked to the principal and how she would want to do that. And, but I think sometimes if we brought it, helped organize it, and we'll get to that at Scranton right now, how we haven't done really what we needed to do at Scranton yet to perform at the level that I believe we will perform at shortly. But similar to here, we kind of have empty rooms that really could be advantageous. I'll leave it with that. So I would like to keep it on the consideration versus chopping it. I think it should be discussed thoroughly, and then if we decide to chop it after discussing it, or if we come up with alternatives, I'm certainly open-minded.
I definitely agree with the idea of having a committee explore what our opportunities are there. Because I mean, this building hasn't received the level of attention and upgrades that we've put into some of our other buildings, and we do have important students here that we want to serve.
We do.
And there's probably an opportunity for some really great flexible space that would meet a variety of needs and give our bridge students and teachers opportunities to imagine a slightly different classroom setup or some new focuses and attention that they haven't had the space to explore before. So I absolutely still support taking some time to see what we can do with that wing of the building.
Has anyone solicited input from the students?
So one thing we have to be aware of is we've just purchased Clark's services for one more year. After that year, we're done, okay? I'm all for forming committees and having input and those types of things, but realistically, if you look at this project and you start backing into the schedule based on Clark's ending date, we need to get a package out very quickly for bids. And it needs to start like probably, hopefully this summer to end by the fall. You can see how long Health Ox is taking right now, and that's just a small space. So realistically, you know, it's going to be probably 3 to 4 months worth of design, and then we're going to have time that we're going to have some estimating, and then we're going to end up having to put it out for bids, and that process probably could be up to, 5 to 6 months. So you put that into the equation, then you look at the end dates. We don't have a lot of time to debate it. We have, I think, somewhere around $500,000 budgeted for it.
598, yep.
598 budgeted for it. So, I'd see what we could fit within that budget. Right now, we've got to make another decision in regards to the end, because some of that work is already in bid pack 5 that we just approved. So we need to get some good direction on that to move forward as well. So that's another topic. And was that the other topic you were going to talk about? It's going to be brought up. So whatever we do, we can't sit here and debate it with committees for months. We need to get a clear definition, and we need to get the architects started on it as soon as possible.
So how have we solicited input from the students as it relates to this space? Do we know? I have very close friends who went through school in an alternative form. They didn't come into a classroom with me in advanced calculus, and they did not want to sit in a classroom. They had no desire to sit in a classroom. They wanted to learn by touching and feeling, engaging with equipment and machines. Is this proposal to bring bridge students into a formal, like traditional classroom and build classrooms for bridge students?
I can tell you, Andy, we haven't brought, like when we did the Health Ox renovation, we didn't bring the nursing students in to ask them their opinion. We went to U of M and we looked at it, and we brought their teachers in and the instructors and the administration and said, what do you think about moving forward like this? I would guess, and again, this is only my opinion, that probably Colleen Deven, who is the principal here, would have the best idea of what would work best for the kids. And I would rely heavily on her for her input.
What about the parents and the students? Giving the parents and the students an opportunity to share their thoughts and weigh in on it.
I don't care who wants to share their thoughts, but it can't be a long, drawn-out process with committee after committee or meeting after meeting after meeting. Otherwise, we're going to end up losing the dollars and the time that we have.
So, I mean, again, it just seems odd that we wouldn't solicit and want to solicit feedback from parents and students who have children in this existing program. Spending $600,000, because if we don't spend it, we lose it and end up building the best classrooms in the world, only to find that the bridge students that participate in these programs have no desire to sit in those $600,000 classrooms, is to me a huge waste of money.
Well, don't forget, at the end of the day too, maybe the bridge students won't be in there, right? Based on future plans is what some of the things we were talking about, junior kindergarten moving and some of the other things as we shuffle around the district. So maybe those classrooms wouldn't be used by bridge students. I don't know. Maybe, you readjust back. So this wing down here is all bridge and that's more junior kindergarten. I don't know. That's more up to the administration staff. So, there's
So
a
thank
lot.
you for being honest, Bill. So we don't know. I agree.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
that's where.
we don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
So on that though, there is a vision there, and there was a vision, there still is. The situation is that a lot of things got between then and now. And when you take it to administration and you take it to, let's say, Colleen, Mrs. Deven, and you say, we're going to expand this program and let's say career technical education, and you're just going to say, just unload that on her, besides her running the school already. And she doesn't have the resources to run that program. And then does she know that her students could use the lab for health occupations, a mini lab here that would expose the students to that, a mini lab for advanced science, a mini lab for potentially industrial trades, and even a welding class, and different things that the students would be exposed to kind of on a career ready thing. And that was really the vision behind it, was to expose the bridge students to everything that we'd like to get them exposed to get excited about what's out there for them in a real sincere way. Because if they're not, and then grow the bridge program as well, where it would become kind of a focal point of what it offers. Here's a school that offers more than any other school at this type, and it would draw from that and sell itself, in my opinion. And that was kind of no different than when we look at this Health Ox Lab that we have all worked together on. I'll tell you, we all worked on that from the beginning. When we first moved it, we renovated the first time 6 years ago, or whatever it was, to where we're going today. It was the same kind of movement. If we don't start somewhere, where do we end? And this building itself has a lot of great resources to it. It was once a high school, and then I went to middle school here. My mom went to high school here, and this was our library we're sitting in, by the way. And so, looking at the resource that we have and building it into, and I've heard this, this flexible space idea and how to build it so it can be used and developed with time. It does make the most sense. The key is, like you said, do we have a survey and what's really the plans for the students? But I would share with you, engineering CAD classes and 3D printers belong in this school as well. I think we have one now, correct? Dr. Ella, do we have an engineering class here at all?
I do not believe we have.
We don't have it. I just asked, just even one 3D printer to come, in graphic arts.
A member of this board who's present this evening went with me through all the schools in this district, or at least a majority of them, and went through chemistry classes, science classes. Spencer went through Spencer Elementary science classes, and we have students who are taking apart toasters, literally taking apart toasters. There's barren shelves in the classrooms that, as we talk to students, directly to students and to teachers, they don't have any semblance of real technology that's available to them on shelves in the classroom to facilitate what I would consider to be learning with advanced technology. We talk to principals. Please show us the computer lab where students are learning how to program and code in Brighton schools.
They don't have one.
They literally walked us to a library with 2 iPads on a table and said, this is the computer lab in the school. And I looked with bewilderment at the principal and said, this is the computer lab? So before we charge forward due to urgency and time and say we're going to commit $600,000 because we're going to lose the money if we don't proceed tomorrow, let's step back and look at what we have available and what we're currently providing, and really think about why there's such an urgency to just move forward blindly versus step back and say, what can we really do with the $600,000 to truly help this district and reshape how students learn in this district, all of the students.
So just going back to the question is, do we want to put together a committee to discuss this? I think there's.
I think we have to,
Well,
because it was set for that.
Yeah, there are the other well, first of all, let me just say that because it was in the bond application.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, we don't, it's not that we can just scrap it.
No.
Right, I mean, but obviously, as has been discussed, in the bond application, as was some of the other STEAM references, it was very generic in terms of, it was the Beck building STEAM build out for whatever, that was.
CTE.
CT. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think we have two options. I mean, I certainly understand and appreciate Mr. Storm's,
So do I.
concern that would not to just
So do I.
charge forward. I also understand Mr. Trombley's concern that, we don't want to, slow walk this to the point where then, it's in, whatever that ends up being, it's into next year. So I personally think we have two options. We can either have a forms like an ad hoc committee of 3 members.
Mm-hmm.
The other alternative would be to have the administration, have Dr. Outlaw, perhaps with Ms. Deven. Ms. Deven's going to know, to the extent that there's feedback from her student body at the bridge. I think out of anyone, she would have the best pulse on what may be the preferences. And, another alternative would be for the administration to have a brainstorming session and then perhaps bring that to us on the 7th. And we're going to be here on the 7th. And we could add that for, further discussion of what they suggest. And then if we still feel like we need some sort of a smaller subcommittee at that point, we can do it then as well.
Does that work?
Dr. Outlaw, could I ask that an invitation's extended, not obligatory for anybody, but at least we extend an invitation for any student who would be interested in addressing the board on this matter, that they would be invited to our next board meeting to share their thoughts with the board?
You mean like at the 13th?
Yeah.
The 7th is really your meeting. That's
Correct.
the most
13th.
important thing is for you to get organized and talk to each other.
Yes.
But, I think taking student voice is fine. Obviously this isn't, we've been, as administration, we've been talking about this project quite a bit. You've brought up quite a few of the concerns that we have. Enrollment, many of these students that are in the bridge are hybrid students. They're doing things virtually and they're credit recovery, so they don't really have a lot of choice in courses. There's a lot of hiccups. Mr. Trombley was talking about the flexible space. If I were to make my recommendation on this, I would talk about being flexible with it, where it may be able to be used for the bridge, but also might be part of our further footprint when we talk about early childhood education, could be used by community education. That wing also is utilized by our operations department, and there's a couple tweaks there that we could do to make that a little bit more functional that are in those plans, like a garage door and paper and things. So we could put together some ideas and bring that back on the 7th. But we will ask Ms. Steven if she has any, maybe she pulls a group of students together and says, what would you want to do? Maybe some of our seniors that would be our target audience. Maybe she can pull a group of students together to say, what would you want? So we can definitely do that.
I'd love to extend an invitation for them to join us at the board meeting on the 13th. And if they show up, great. If not, no problem.
Yeah, there will be a student from the bridge here for sure.
Students.
I said there will be one here for sure. I'm not going to force them to be here if they don't want to come.
My
but-
next door neighbor is in the program, so.
Yeah, great.
There is a third option, obviously, is you can turn the funds back in for unused if they don't get used. So the money can be turned back in and it takes it off the dole for the taxpayers. So, the need to go do something you don't need it, Andy, I totally understand. But the vision is that these students would have opportunities that they didn't have. And we have a number of students at our high school that are in classrooms that have extra help for those students to get where they're going to go. And I don't think anybody on this board has ever said not to support those students. And remember, our target is we're taking students and creating opportunities for them. And there could be a high cost per student compared to what we're used to get this opportunity for those students. But the changes and opportunities for those students is what we're asking for. So, and it could be a higher cost than the normal student. Let's say we have X of dollars that we put towards this, but because, let's say what I'm thinking, my father was a Boys Town graduate. Okay, he would credit Father Flanagan with saving his life. So what are we supposed to do here? We have taxpayers' money to use in a proper method, like you're asking for. And so I just ask you to be patient and confident that this group has been pretty good at that so far, that we can look at something and see if we can. And again, I think my dad was credited with an 8th grade graduation and then on into the Army Air Corps for him. So, but the idea was that stopping point for him changed generations now, all the way to my kids who now have college degrees and master's degrees and all those things. So think about it that way versus just,
100%
I know that,
in support of and have unwavering commitment to the bridge program and bridge
to
students.
students. Yep,
I do not support blindly charging forward
understood.
with a $600 million or $600,000 project that we need to get done and start tomorrow due to time,
It's not.
if it doesn't make the most sense for the district and in the long run won't help the students that are involved. That's what I
100%
care
agree.
So
about.
if I could just extend that conversation into the second part of it, because they flow together. Okay, so Mr. Trombley talked about that timeline. Let's say we were going to design, it's going to be 3 to 4 months for design. Mr. Sellers, I think so. Let's say it's 5 to 6 months. You've just approved the extension of our construction managers through the end of 2023. So that gets us to December. And you have, let's just say hypothetically, $1.5 million of contingency
negotiated
that you have
another month out
not
of them.
decided on what those projects will be. So my question to you, it's not an easy question, it's a hard question, is about timing to make decisions about what contingency dollars will be spent on. You've met multiple times, met in the summertime, you met in twice in the summer, and then talked a little bit about this, and you've spent some of this money. You've allocated that. Some of our meetings, the most recent was on October 24th with the Hilton restroom project. This is our most recent list. I put this in front of you just so that you have it, some of the ideas. This question is not what projects are we going to do? My question is timing wise, because decisions are going to have to be made soon if we're going to have enough time to design and go out to bid and do all of those things in order to complete a project in the timeline that you have done. Otherwise, we're going to be extending, you're going to be back here next January extending because we have not finished the project.
100,000.
So I'm asking for your advice, for your perspective, timeline-wise, when can we make that decision? And then another variable in that is that contingency dollars is not a static number. It could change. It could be 1.5 today, it could be 1.2, by the summertime. So I want to have some dialogue with you all about how it is as a district that we're going to finish this project for those projects that have not yet been decided on.
So I would just offer the 3 to 4 month, did I hear 3 to 4 month?
I think that was what was shared, Mike. Is that what you would say?
In,
That's just for design.
outside of public education, in the industrial world that I live in every day, we do $1 million projects like this in weeks, not months. So there are absolutely contractors in this area who would be willing to help our school district in weeks versus months. Suggesting it takes 3 to 4 months to go through this process, that may be true working with certain contractors, but there are many who can help us accelerate that timeline. And it's not a one-off circumstance. It's not the exception. It's just us finding contractors who can move faster than maybe some of the ones that we've been working with in the past.
So on the scope of the money that's left to be used, I would prefer that everything goes towards, like we have on here, our science labs and math labs, I think somewhere possibly, but I would just like to see it be used for that. And finish up this thing and with design intent, like Mr. Storm's talking about, and if it doesn't have to be 3 and 4, if it can be done in 30 days, but if it's in the science labs, to update these science labs, because that was in the scope of work from the beginning, as if we could do this. And I think the taxpayers, really the students, our students deserve a real solid look at this with a dream sheet, just like we have for the district. And we had these plans, the original $88 million bond and this last $60 million bond, where money would be spent because they couldn't get it all in the first bond, then things were picked up. Well, to me, creating a very vibrant world within the school that helps these young people go on to compete at the highest levels. And I can share with you, our Health Ox just got into some competitions, and I understand they won several of the positions. Is that correct? Does anybody know about the results on that? But anyway, they just went out to compete. DECA did great business with Storman, but also so the Health Ox group. They went out and did some competing, and they wound up taking some first place. Again, back to challenging, right, and getting ready to take on the world. So that's my vision for what's left with the money is much, if not all of it, getting steered towards our science departments to make the biggest impact as possible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we have to consider as we are allocating these dollars is, because that amount of money we have to work with is shifting as the construction projects we've already greenlit go forward, we should be aware that, we're going to pick something that either we have to stop or we have to fund out of the general fund.
Right.
And from my perspective, I agree with Mr. Conley. I'd like to see the majority of this go into planning for remodeling science labs and having a plan that we see as extending beyond the bond.
Oh, no question. And it would carry on even to new boards and.
But then we will carry it forward, yeah.
And to get that technology you're talking about up in all of these classrooms to the best of our ability to compete and to bring it to a level that we believe is adequate.
Have we solicited input from teachers and students in the science classes that
Yes.
we have?
Yeah, I've met with them. We were actually supposed to go to Michigan State just a couple weeks ago. Michigan State canceled on us. The prompt for our staff has been, what are science labs going to look like 20 years from today? What's going to look like in the future? And it's a tough question. So we need to take some trips and see what some cutting edge things are. We are going to go to Michigan State. They weren't able to meet. We were going to go on January 11th to go observe some of their cutting edge labs. So this work's been going on. I've got a list of things from our science teachers. We need to go out there and see the stuff in action. The only hesitation I have on the science, I agree. I think the science is a spot that needs investment, is the timing on it. That's the only thing, just because it's not a turnkey. It's not like a chiller. Okay, this is what you do with a chiller, but this one we're trying to envision what that will look like. My recommendation with science labs, because the dollars are not endless here, is that we look at model classrooms. Physics had very good ideas, and there was like a real plan there. I'd love to do a physics lab if you're going to do that. And there's a couple other things within it. There's some science or some chemistry equipment that would be really beneficial. But my ultimate question is, when's the board going to want to can we make this decision in February? Can we be ready to go in February?
I'd make a motion to make it right now and get it over with.
When you say this, talking about just like.
Where to
this
allocate
extra-
this money.
Not the.
What's the plan for the contingency dollars so that we can get our ducks in a row and get this,
You just
get this
you
bond
need
done?
board consensus, or do you need a
Do we
vote?
need to know how much we have in contingency for sure?
No, we do not. And that number is
I think we
fluid.
should find that out first before we spend the money.
Absolutely. That's what we'd like to come back to you with that number. Mike, around 1.5 million, and always reconciling that, but it could be whatever that number is today, 3 months from now could be, a third less. I mean, we don't know.
Ella, who has the feedback from the students and from the classroom?
I
the
have it
teachers?
up in my office.
You do? Okay,
I
so I
met
can
with
work
them.
with you offline.
Yeah, I facilitated with them. I will
Is it
tell
like
you,
an Excel spreadsheet? What format is it?
they're my handwritten notes. I'm happy to share with the board. I can tell you this, that we are not there yet. And that's why I'm telling you, it's going to take more time. We need to go see cutting edge science classrooms. And I think the university level is where we're going to need to go. Like I said, we were going to go to Michigan State. They have 2 very cutting edge science classrooms. We've got work to do to envision what that will look like in the future. Some of the flexible furniture is a big one for physics. But there's a number of other things that are ideas. And like I said, there's more work to be done. But happy to sit down and talk
Yeah,
through
I mean,
that.
we ought to challenge each other, challenge the community, parents, teachers to think big and different than we traditionally have. We being
Completely agree.
people who've gone through public education like I have.
Yeah.
And physics, chemistry, biology, computer science and programming, like the labs that we ultimately pursue should be very, very, very different than the labs we currently have in Brighton Public Schools today. And so, think of crash test dummies, like actually being able to crash vehicles in a physics class, put sensors on the vehicle, be able to monitor forces and like that type of physics versus sitting at a table with a mundane, piece of equipment that's creates for a very boring learning experience versus a very dynamic one.
Sure.
On that, Alicia, somebody, go ahead. Ms. Morris.
Oh, I think everyone got it. Thanks. But this is a BHS, right? So would the idea be for science that it would start at the high school, or are we talking also about incorporating 7-8 in that plan?
I think the vision should be, we're going to start what we're going to do over some time. I think everything needs to be reworked, kind of with the end in mind. Where, like, again, what's that science lab of the future going to look like? What's science education going to look like 20 years from now? And then let's build around that. So that's.
Alicia brought up a good point, though. We, not knowing where the bank is or the piggy bank is put it in motion, make it where it's going to be sustainable. It's going to move without, as the bond money disappears, because the key is that we don't fall back. And Andy, you're spot on in your observations. Been seeing different things. That's the big push for the STEAM Center at Scranton, which we don't have any instructors for yet. I mean, there's a lot going on that will be addressed. And it's not been easy to deal with, right? But we are everybody up here. So I think Alicia and I just seem to agree on everything. I just don't know where this is going to go. So it's great. But the idea that what she said is have it a continuation, start here with a vision as it continues. And we have money in our general fund besides bond dollars that can continue to contribute classroom by classroom by classroom to see this evolve. It doesn't require another bond to do it necessarily. We get a vision and how can we best, and then use our engineering companies to help us the best they can, and then we'll continue it when they're gone and keep it moving. It really has to continue. So there has to be some form of it. And we can't sit still. The rest of everything's moving. You're in industry more than anybody here.
I will just continue to beat the drum and I'll shut up and let this go. But
yeah,
we keep coming back to we need to do it. We have a list of things we need to do. Dr. Outlaw has spoken to parents and students and has handwritten notes that he can share with the board. I really want to continue to advocate for soliciting real input from teachers, having a structured forum for them, for that feedback to make its way back to board members in a structured, formal way. Students, teachers, parents, we want their feedback and want to give them an opportunity to share their feedback. And then as a board, formulate a plan to then act upon it as a board.
So just remember, whatever we do, we're on the same time frame as what we are for Beck. We have a year. We have limited amount of time to get, I don't care who's on the committee, how many people want to have input, that's all well and fine. But you know as well as I do, typically that kind of stuff takes time. And then it takes time to figure out what everybody wants and try to put something together. We have a year. That's it. If you want Clark and the construction management to continue to administer the project. Otherwise, I don't know how you're going to get it done.
We also have only so long to spend the bond dollars too before
Right.
we can no longer spend them.
Can we finalize our homework here and then come back to you in February? And let's get the final decisions made, if that works. I think the science labs is wise because if the number is fluid, if it's $1 million, then you invest $1 million. If it's $2 million, you invest $2 million.
And let me qualify my statement. My only reason for having it done within a year, if it's brick and mortar. If it's furniture and equipment, that's a whole different story. That's
sure
beyond it.
Is there a time on the bond? I heard that. Is there a time limit with this?
We've got time.
Okay.
Well, we've got a year more worth of Clark's Construction Services.
Yep.
that we-
Okay.
That we're purchasing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is an important conversation and we needed to talk it through. So this is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. That moves us to item B on, for future action, the discussion regarding funding classroom and office cleaning supplies. Mr. Scaling?
Mr. Storm.
Oh,
Yep. So as a parent who has today 6 students in Brighton Public Schools, I told my wife years ago, if I ever have an opportunity to be on the school board, there's one thing I'd love to do, a simple, just step forward, a little simple continuous improvement item, and that is to relieve teachers of having to send emails home to parents requesting we parents donate boxes of Kleenex and markers and office supplies, and no teacher in this district should be sending emails to parents requesting boxes of Kleenex. Because in the email below that email is an email inviting me to go participate in a open house for a $4.5 million sports complex. I love sports, played in sports my whole life. Children are involved in sports. Huge proponent and advocate for sports in Brighton Public Schools. I would like to, as a board, agree that we do not need or want our teachers to have to send emails to parents requesting boxes of Kleenex, and would like to suggest that we stop that practice in Brighton schools.
Doesn't each teacher get like $150 a year at the beginning of the year to buy supplies like that? And aren't they privy to the supply rooms and things for items like that?
Yeah, I gathered a little bit of information for this, and several of our buildings do provide Kleenex for the building. Others do not, and there are allocations. Obviously, at the elementary school, they get a little bit more just because there's a little bit more classroom supplies, but there's some that get 300, Maltby is 125, but the building buys some of those supplies that we're talking about. So it varies building by building. I'm just providing information. I think what you're saying is being done in certain buildings and not in other buildings. So whatever the board wants on this.
I have a correction for you. It was 7 million.
Yeah, I was going to
7
say
million.
you're
Thank
about
you.
3 off.
Thank you.
You missed that by
Thank
3 million. And a $100 million annual budget. So my position on this, Andy, and I've always been, because of, let's just say you have a group and here they're sitting 30 students and you ask and you reach out to the students to help do this. There are some that may not be able to help you. Okay. And that's the reality. Okay. And why would we ever put a student in a position to feel that maybe they can't afford it. Maybe their parents won't allow it, but yet other kids can, and the other kids bring in 10 boxes of Kleenex. The other student can't bring in any. So that's my position on it. It's just fair and balanced. We shouldn't be asking for anything because we should supply everything, and we should supply pencils, and the teachers shouldn't have to go buy this stuff out of their own pocket, which they have in the past in different situations. And so I would be in 100% support of not asking any children to bring donations from home for those products. And the thing you don't want to distract, though, is let's say that somebody wants to donate to one of our dog programs or our dog program, and those donations are very important. We're not saying no donations are allowed, but in the purpose of soliciting a student or a parent to do that when the school should be providing it, we get, just under $10,000 per student to educate each child. We certainly can make sure. And there's also companies right now that are handing out the hand sanitizer for free because they have so much surplus of this stuff, and all this stuff's out there. So
Any family that would like to donate is welcome to donate.
right,
Let's relieve teachers of having to send
solicit.
emails
to solicit.
to from anyone, right?
Is that something I can take back to the principals? We have a meeting tomorrow and I can share that with them. Again, half of our buildings already provide Kleenex for everybody else, but I could talk to the others. And maybe we just have a standard. At the elementary level, the elementary principals, when I was soliciting information, they said, some parents just want to bring stuff in and they want to help. And they're like,
That's
what
super.
can I do?
That's
What can I?
super.
So I don't think that we want to stifle parents from
That's totally
Anyone that
doing
wants
out
to
of the
donate,
goodness.
wave it in.
But teachers asking for it, I think.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
If I could talk to them, it'd be great.
Using the email service to ask for it.
My concern, based on what you shared, is just that there's inconsistency between our buildings. We should be supporting all of our classrooms equally and should provide teachers with a good mechanism to ask for what they need in their classrooms. So that's.
Without going down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
why is it? Like, why would something as mundane as that be different from building to building?
So, as a former high school principal, you make decisions. And if you look at the schools that don't provide it, they get more individual allocations to the teachers. And then, like, for example, at Scranton, the teachers get less allocation, but then they get Kleenex provided. So it's,
But
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
I
That's a
think-
true
I think-
statement.
Sounds like they're all spending the money, they're just allocating.
yeah, they're allocating it differently. And I think, to Ms. Reed's point, I think the consistency would be great. And I think the message, I will definitely share that back with the principals and our touch base.
I think
okay.
adequate supplies really is the key, whether it's pens, pencils, stuff for the art room, whatever it is, we're supposed to provide that without burdening the families. And again, I'm sure that there are families that can't afford to help us that are in our schools.
Okay. All right.
I went K through 12 in a district where a majority of the students were below the poverty line and on reduced lunch. And my parents never, ever received correspondence from the school requesting, I almost said email, correspondence, email didn't exist, requesting they donate boxes of Kleenex and markers and pencils. So let's work on that.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, that moves us to item C, BEA office.
Could I just say one thing before that? I'm wondering if I could ask, Mr. Meyer and Ms. Reed, just as lawyers, maybe just some of the cautions, because we've talked about this in closed session. There's some things that we want to be careful to not do in a discussion. Maybe if you could just review some of those things.
What if we went into closed session first and then came back and brought it for future?
I mean, that's fine. We would have to modify the agenda again.
Okay to say something?
Sure.
I strongly disagree with that, Dr. Outlaw. We know exactly what we're talking about. We've all talked about it outside of closed session. It's been discussed with virtually everybody, the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I have no knowledge of anything from any legal entity that's currently going to take place. I know past, but not for discussion tonight. And I believe it's time to put this on the table so it's recorded. It's not what I'm doing it for, but the point is it's going to become an accurate record starting right now. And I'm ready to disclose the
Just there's some
details.
things that you've talked about in
It's
closed
illegal.
session.
It's
that you-
illegal. We're not allowed to do anything illegal. Go ahead.
The bottom line is, you're going to say what you want to say. but
Correct.
Obviously, anything discussed in closed session, it's against the law to disclose in a public.
So before we go into that, we'll discuss it right now, before it becomes illegal.
I'm just saying this has been a topic of previous closed sessions.
I understand.
so-
And you'll help me with that if I bump into something, but I won't do that intentionally. So I'd like to proceed.
It's on the agenda.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. For years, we've had a office run by the Brighton Education Association located in Brighton High School. Nobody knows how long. That office has been headquarters for a union operation that has taken aim at Brighton area schools. It's done battle here in the boardroom. It stood out on the sidewalks and made it so loud in here you couldn't think. That group has been in our school. Now, we funded it as well, by the way. Our school has paid for the heat, lights, possibly computers, no, for sure phone systems. And the interesting thing about this office is we don't even have a key to it. So how can this operation run within Brighton area schools without the permission of the school board and without technically the permission of the administration? Well, it's gone on and gone on a long time. And they do have a collective bargaining agreement that allows the use of the schools with permission after school when those facilities aren't being used by students. And this classroom is in the middle of the high school. It is not available to students. No students can go in it. It's locked during the day. In fact, our superintendent and our management of the school do not even have a key for this classroom. But yet it runs on days, at certain days of the week. It runs, I believe, Tuesdays and Thursdays are its open days. It has an employee inside this room within the Brighton High School that is employed by the Brighton Education Association. An employee carries an ID badge of Brighton area schools. The ID badge indicates that a person is an employee of Brighton area schools, but they're not. As well as there's no security file or security check on that particular individual that works for the Brighton Education Association that's within our school. Now, how could all this stack up like this? And it just is allowed to continue. Well, for the last months, I've made 2 or 3 attempts to visit the classroom, and under Dr. Outlaw's insistence, no one from our group is allowed to enter the classroom. Dr. Outlaw has not allowed it. I've asked for it to be put on agendas prior to this one, where it would just be on for future action. It can't get on the agenda until tonight, which is, it's good that we're talking about it. It's been attempted to be, used in closed sessions for discussions. And in the last 10 days or so, maybe 2 weeks, I went over to the high school and I asked if I could go and just see what's going on in this office to see what's happening within the high school. I was blocked by the union president and said that I couldn't come in the classroom. And I said, well, and there's another board member that was with me, by the way. And I said, well, we just want to see what's going on. And so I can report it back to the board so I can give them a firsthand what's happening here. That wasn't allowed, and he told me specifically that he was under the direction of the superintendent to not allow me in the classroom. Now, that classroom was owned by Brighton Area Schools, which is a state. The school's owned by the state of Michigan. It's owned by the taxpayers. No one has an entity right to be in that, if that's the right word. You guys are attorneys, but no one has a right to own it. There's an ownership going on here that shouldn't be there. Keys, locked, unavailable to us as board members, unavailable to our administration, by the way. Our own principal doesn't have a key to the classroom in the school. How can that be? So I looked up the charter of this Brighton Education Association, and they're a nonprofit, and it says that they're a division of the NEA, the National Education Association, and the MEA. It says it right in their write-up. And then I did a little looking a few months ago, and son of a gun, if that group wasn't attached to our website, the BEA, they were automatically on our website. You could click on the Brighton Area Schools website, hit a button, and you could go to the ME or the BEA office and their website. Now, how can this be? There are laws in the state of Michigan that protect this from happening. Those laws I'm not going to cite tonight, but they talk about taxpayers' money being used to fund nonprofits. Now, technically, we're funding this. There's no money coming our way. We're not being paid rent. We're not being paid anything. And we continue to allow it. And I've asked him, and I've asked through administration to just have them move and not have this conversation. Whatever happened for the last 10 years, 20 or 30, however long this has gone on, I have no idea. But I know for certain in the last election, that office was used to transfer information regarding election materials. That also is against the law because we're contributing to it. And we're not allowed to contribute to it as a school or a public entity. And there are many laws on that. So let's see. So they're illegally using our space, our equipment. There's an employee on site that's not our employee that has our badge on, that has no background check. It not only violates district policy that that person's in the building, but also what do we know about the background of this person and our students at risk type thing. We don't allow it. But in this case, we're just continuing to allow it. So that's what I have to say tonight. And I have more to say, but I'll leave it till we get done with this next meeting. But there's under no circumstances that this is a legal thing for the school to fund. And we'll go into the next session and figure out how that is. Thank you.
Okay. I move this board go into closed session pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to review confidential written attorney-client communication.
Do we have a motion by Ms. Marks? Do we have a second?
Support.
Support by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All right, we need a roll call vote. Ms. Ackermite, please.
Mr. Trombley,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Dr. Krebs,
Yes.
Mr. Storm,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes. All right, that motion passes 7-0. We will be going into closed session. That will conclude the public meeting portion. At this juncture, we will come out and have another closed session later this evening, but as of right now, the public portion is adjourned. I don't know, where, do you want to go down?
We're gonna go to 131. That worked for everybody. Then we can leave the camera on until we completely done.
We have to come back up here then to go.
At the very end.
I think we should go.
I would open the door and anybody wants to come in. Okay.
We'll talk, I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
But
much.
there are some limits here. Like they would have to fund that cost.
Okay,
There are
right.
some things I've had discussions
Okay, all right. We'll talk to you soon.
on.
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be back up.
I just called my brother.
Good night. Bye.
Anna, why did you not call Gordon?
Is she here still?
We're taking Bill's stuff down to him.
Okay, I think, is Bill coming back up or is he?
He's going to meet us back down there. He just steps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We got enough? Okay, we got enough. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so we are back in session after the closed session. And now, Ms. Marks?
I move that this board go into closed session pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meeting Act to review confidential written attorney-client communication.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Marks. Any support?
Support.
Support by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Ms. Ackermight.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes?
Mr. Storm?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes. That motion passes 5-0. We will be going back into closed session.
Will we be coming back up here then one more time to
Yes.
close it
Yep.
out?
Yes.
But we, yeah, I mean, just to close the meeting, but, yeah, we won't be voting on anything, Andy, so you want to make a quick escape from the.
Someone sleeping in there in the corner?
It shouldn't be that.
Well, it shouldn't, but it's the way of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think, so.
exactly. Oh, she just leaves them here. Yeah. All right, we are back in open session. That concludes all of the items that are on our agenda for this evening. Our next regular meeting is Monday, February 13 at 7 o'clock. As everyone knows, we have our board workshop on February 7th at 7 o'clock. We've talked about either tonight or previously items that we will include on the agenda. If anyone has any other topics they would like to add to that agenda, please email me or Dr. Outlaw, and, we can obviously have as robust of a discussion as we can with topics that people want to talk about. So, all right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.